Emma Dawson walked quietly through the hallways of HeartTech, one of the largest tech firms in Silicon Valley. She clutched her modest folder with carefully printed resumes, dressed in a second-hand blazer, and tried not to look too nervous. Most applicants had sleek tablets or wore designer suits. But Emma was different, not just in appearance, but in background. Her father, Robert Dawson, had worked as the building's janitor for over 2 decades. Many people recognized her not by name, but as the janitor's daughter. Ever since she was young, Emma had shown a passion for engineering and problem-solving. She used to help her father fix broken equipment around the company after hours, sometimes sneaking peeks at the complex schematics on whiteboards or reading discarded technical manuals. While she couldn't afford college, Emma spent years teaching herself advanced calculus, coding, and machine learning through free online resources. Her GitHub account was filled with impressive projects, but none of that seemed to matter in a world obsessed with Ivy League degrees. When she entered the interview room, there were 3 people sitting behind the long glass table, including the CEO, Douglas Hart. He looked at her resume with a raised brow, his lips curling into a smirk. "Let me guess," he said without looking up. "You want to join our tech team, with no college degree, no corporate experience, and—" He looked down. "Your dad is Robert Dawson, the janitor." Emma held her ground, even though her heart pounded. "Yes, sir. I know I don't come from a traditional background, but I've built a few programs." Hart interrupted, waving her off. "That's cute. We actually just had a system issue this morning with our proprietary predictive engine. Took our engineers 3 hours, and they still couldn't crack it." He stood up, walked over to a large whiteboard behind the desk, and scribbled a series of complex mathematical equations and flowcharts. "Here," he said, tossing her a dry erase marker. "You say you're good? Fix this. Let's see what the janitor's daughter can do." A few of the interviewers chuckled. Emma felt heat rise in her cheeks, but stepped forward anyway. Her eyes scanned the board. It was messy but familiar. Her brain clicked into gear. She recognized the flawed recursion loop and saw the data pipeline bottleneck almost immediately. Without a word, she began rewriting a segment of code and annotating the logic with alternative function calls. For 10 full minutes, the room was dead silent except for the squeak of the marker. When she finally stepped back, her work was complete, detailed, and color-coded. She turned toward them, calm and confident. Douglas Hart stared at the board. One of the other interviewers whispered, That might actually work." Hart looked stunned but didn't speak. Emma didn't wait for approval or applause. She gathered her folder and nodded, politely. "Thank you for your time," she said. "Even if this doesn't lead to a position, I appreciate the opportunity." As she walked out of the room, she heard the silence behind her. No more laughter, no more mocking tones. Emma returned home, not expecting much. She'd been underestimated her entire life, but something about the look on their faces told her this time might be different. That evening, Emma sat on the worn-out couch in her small apartment, sipping tea with her father. Robert Dawson was proud, but cautious. "Don't get your hopes too high, sweetheart," he said gently. "These big companies, they don't always see talent in the places they should." Emma smiled softly. "I know, Dad, but I didn't do it for their approval. I just wanted to show what I could do." Just then, her old phone buzzed on the table. It was an email from HeartTech's HR department. The subject line read, "Urgent. Please respond immediately." Her heart skipped a beat. She opened it with trembling hands. The message was brief, but shocking. "Dear Ms. Dawson, we'd like to offer you a position as a junior systems architect at HeartTech, effective immediately. Your technical assessment today was not only correct, but also introduced a more efficient solution than what our team had been attempting for weeks. CEO Douglas Hart has personally requested a meeting with you tomorrow at 9 a.m. Emma gasped. Robert leaned over her shoulder to read, "They offered you a job, and the CEO wants to meet you again." She nodded slowly. "Looks like it." The next morning, Emma walked through the same glass doors of HeartTech, but this time with more confidence. She was greeted by the receptionist with a warm smile and led upstairs to the executive floor, somewhere she had never been allowed to go, even when helping her father clean late at night. Douglas Hart stood waiting in his sleek office, looking less smug and more curious. He extended his hand. "Miss Dawson, I owe you an apology." Emma shook it hesitantly. "For what exactly?" He sighed. "For judging you based on your background. I looked at your solution again last night. It wasn't just smart, it was innovative. You saved us a potential multi-million-dollar loss in predictive modeling. Our biggest client was threatening to walk." Emma simply replied, "I just saw what was broken and fixed it." Hart chuckled. "You know, not even our senior engineers caught the recursive loop. You did in 5 minutes what we couldn't in 3 hours." He offered her a seat and asked about her self-taught journey. Emma explained how she learned coding between part-time jobs, helped her dad with maintenance, and stayed up nights studying computer science on public library Wi-Fi. By the end of the conversation, Hart said, "We need people like you, people who solve problems, not just collect degrees." He handed her a contract, one that included a signing bonus, benefits, and even tuition. Reimbursement if she ever wanted to complete a formal degree, but that wasn't the end. Weeks later, Emma's story went viral on social media. Hartech released a press statement about their newest team member, a janitor's daughter who had redefined what potential looks like. Tech blogs celebrated her as a symbol of grit and raw talent. High schoolers messaged her. Inspired by her journey, companies began re-evaluating their hiring practices. Robert watched from the sidelines, eyes often filled with tears. "All these years of working late, hoping for something better for you," he whispered. "I never dreamed you'd rise so high." Emma, now confidently walking the halls of Hartech as a respected architect, often looked at the whiteboard she had once scribbled on. It was framed now, untouched, just as she had left it. Every day she passed by, she reminded herself, brilliance isn't born in boardrooms or universities. Sometimes it rises from janitor closets and late-night study sessions. Reimbursement if she ever wanted to complete a formal degree, but that wasn't the end. Weeks later, Emma's story went viral on social media. Hartech released a press statement about their newest team member, a janitor's daughter who had redefined what potential looks like. Tech blogs celebrated her as a symbol of grit and raw talent. High schoolers messaged her. Inspired by her journey, companies began re-evaluating their hiring practices. Robert watched from the sidelines, eyes often filled with tears. "All these years of working late, hoping for something better for you," he whispered. "I never dreamed you'd rise so high." Emma, now confidently walking the halls of Hartech as a respected architect, often looked at the whiteboard she had once scribbled on. It was framed now, untouched, just as she had left it. Every day she passed by, she reminded herself, brilliance isn't born in boardrooms or universities. Sometimes it rises from janitor closets and late-night study sessions.